The first time I saw her after all those years, my heart didn't just skip a beat. It stopped, stumbled, and tried to remember how to breathe. Stood frozen in the hospital corridor, staring at the woman I once knew as a barefoot girl chasing kites through dusty village fields. She turned slowly, her eyes, tired but still somehow shining. And when they met mine, something deep inside me shifted. It felt like time folded in on itself, crashing the past into the present with a force I wasn't ready for. She whispered with a trembling voice, shaped by years of distance and unspoken stories. That one sentence I never expected to hear again. She said I promised to marry her when we were kids, and all I could think was that I'd spent half my life trying to forget myself, my failures, my broken dreams. Yet somehow I never stopped remembering her in that moment, as the weight of her words settled onto my shoulders. I replied with the only truth I had left. I asked her if that promise still counted, and from the way her breath caught, I knew this reunion was going to change everything for both of us in ways we could not imagine. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and promises that survive time, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps these stories reach more hearts like yours. I hadn't planned to return to the city, not like this, not after the accident that nearly shattered my life. I was working as a mechanic in a coastal town, living quietly, hiding from the pieces of my past I didn't know how to face. But when my mother fell seriously ill, I had no choice but to bring her to the city hospital where the specialists could treat her. I thought the hardest part would be juggling bills, hospital appointments, and the constant fear of losing the only family I had left. I didn't know fate had a very different plan, one I wasn't prepared for, and that she had been waiting on the other end of an unfinished childhood story. Her name was Aisha. I had not spoken her name out loud in almost 15 years. We used to share secrets behind the old banyan tree near the riverbank, telling each other what we wanted to be when we grew up. She wanted to be a teacher, someone who could change lives quietly and gently. I wanted to be someone who could fix broken things. Ironically, I never learned how to fix myself. We were barely 10 years old when we exchanged that innocent promise under monsoon clouds drenched in rain and laughter. She said she would marry me one day if I never broke her trust. I said I would marry her if she never stopped smiling. It was childish, maybe foolish, but it meant something back then. It meant everything. Life, however, doesn't bend for childhood vows. We moved away when I was 14 because of my father's job. And after that, everything fell apart. My father passed soon after, and responsibility swallowed me whole. Before I understood what the word meant, I dropped out of school to work odd jobs, and survival became a daily battle. There was no space for dreams, letters, or promises. Not even the ones made under banyan trees. Seeing her in the hospital after all those years felt like the universe had looped back to a moment I didn't know I needed. She wore a simple light blue dress, a teacher's ID card still hanging around her neck. She looked the same in all the ways that mattered, gentle, composed, holding wounds behind her eyes that only someone who once knew her could recognize. She wasn't sick. She was accompanying a student who had been injured in an accident. When she recognized me, her hand flew to her mouth, and she stood completely still, as if touching the past might shatter the present. We walked to the courtyard outside the hospital, neither of us speaking at first. She kept staring at me like she was trying to piece together the boy she once knew with the man standing in front of her now. I wanted to speak, to explain the years, the pain, the sudden disappearance, but when she finally asked me why I never returned, why I never wrote, why I never even tried, my throat closed. I didn't have a good answer. Only regrets. As she talked, I noticed subtle exhaustion pulling at her voice, like she carried burdens heavier than her slim shoulders could bear. When she told me her mother had passed 3 years ago, and her father had left the family long ago, my chest tightened. She had been alone in ways I failed to imagine. She said she learned to rely on herself because there was no one left to rely on. She looked at me with a mixture of longing and hurt that made me feel like I had failed her in every possible way. Inside my heart, something cracked open. Over the next week, while caring for my mother, I found myself running into her again and again, sometimes by chance, sometimes because I secretly wished to see her again. Each meeting felt like a slow, painful pull toward a truth we both tried to avoid. We shared coffee from the hospital vending machine. We talked about her students, her dreams of opening a small learning center for underprivileged kids, and the struggles she faced trying to make ends meet. I watched the way she smiled despite everything. I watched the way her eyes softened when she spoke about children who needed someone to believe in them. I watched her strength, quiet but powerful, and I found myself wondering how I had let someone like her slip away. But life wasn't done testing us one evening. After receiving the results of my mother's tests, I learned that her condition required an expensive treatment we couldn't afford. I felt helpless, suffocating under the weight of reality, knowing I was losing her. Slowly, Aisha found me sitting alone on the steps outside, staring into nothing. Without asking, she sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched, but not quite. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence alone steadied my breath. She told me she had applied for extra tutoring sessions to earn more money, even though she was already exhausted, and she offered a part of her income to help me. I refused, ashamed of how much I was struggling, but she insisted quietly. She said helping people was the one thing she had left to give, and she didn't want me to crumble alone. For the first time in years, I felt something warm push against the walls I had built around myself. Days turned into nights, and we slowly fell back into a rhythm that felt eerily familiar, like walking through a forgotten dream. We talked about our past, the games we used to play, the rainstorms we used to run through, but the more we spoke, the more I could see the unspoken question in her eyes. Was our childhood promise just a memory to me now, or did it still hold weight? I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know what I deserved. Then came the night she brought it up, the night she said those words that shook the ground beneath me. She said she remembered the promise I made so long ago. She said it softly, like she wasn't sure she had the right to say it. There was no accusation, no bitterness, just a quiet ache. She said she wondered if it still meant anything to me. She said she spent years trying to forget it, but never truly could. That was when I replied from a place deeper than anything I had ever admitted, even to myself. I asked her if that promise still counted, and that single question opened a doorway we had both been afraid to walk through. From that night onward, something shifted between us. We didn't speak about love, not directly, but everything felt heavier, warmer, more fragile. She started visiting my mother with me. She brought homemade soup, read stories to her, and even humored her when she mistook Aisha for a nurse. My mother liked her instantly, which wasn't surprising. My mother always believed the heart recognized something before the mind did. But just as things were beginning to feel hopeful, my mother's condition worsened unexpectedly. One night, she took my hand and whispered, with a frail smile, that life was too short to leave words unsaid. She said she saw the way I looked at Aisha, with fear and longing twisted together, and she told me not to waste another second. She said I had punished myself long enough for the hardships I couldn't control. She asked me to promise her that I would choose love while I still had the chance. She passed away the next morning. The loss tore something from my soul, leaving me empty and drifting. I avoided everyone for days, shutting myself in my small apartment, unable to face the world without the one person who had always believed in me. But grief has a way of revealing who truly stands with you. Aisha didn't give up. She knocked on my door every evening, leaving food quietly when I didn't answer. One night, when I finally opened the door, she didn't say a word. She simply stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, holding me like I was something worth saving. In that embrace, I understood what my mother meant. I understood what I was running from wasn't failure. It was the fear of letting someone see the bruised parts of me I had spent years hiding. From then on, the walls began to crumble. We started spending more time together, not out of obligation, but out of something deeper, something fragile yet powerful. Helped her with her tutoring center, fixing broken desks, repairing old fans, painting walls, turning that small, worn-out room into a place children could feel safe in. She helped me rebuild my sense of purpose, reminding me that I wasn't defined by my struggles or the years I lost trying to survive. Slowly, gently, without either of us saying it out loud, our hearts stitched themselves back together. She became the warmth I thought I didn't deserve, and I became the steady ground she had longed to rest upon. Months later, on a quiet evening under the same kind of monsoon sky we once played beneath, I took her to the old banyan tree near our childhood village. The air smelled of wet soil and memories. The tree had grown bigger, stronger, like the promise we once made without understanding its weight. I stood beside her, the wind tugging at her hair, and I told her the truth, that I still meant that childhood vow, that I had always meant it, even when life pulled me away. I told her that every step of my journey had led me back to this moment, back to her, back to the promise that refused to die. Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness but of something much deeper. Relief, forgiveness, love. She held my hand tightly, like she had been waiting to do so for half a lifetime, and for the first time I felt whole. If this story touched your heart in even the smallest way, Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these emotional stories alive before the story ends. Comment below. Promises that survive time are the strongest. As the rain finally began to fall around us, soft and gentle, I realized something profound. Some promises aren't childish. Some are simply waiting for the right time to bloom, and ours, fragile but enduring, finally found its home.